Has DC missed a huge opportunity with Jon Kent? Oof, maybe. And is Superman or Zatanna right about what defines each of us? I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. This is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on October 16th and originally published September 18th. First of those, I'll make some just brief comments on 3 of these 4 comics I'm going to talk about. I'm going to spend most of my time, I think, on Superman 18, but World's Finest number 31 is, I mean, it's enjoyable enough, but it's a kind of a flashback story about an earlier time in the Justice League going up against Eclipso. And while I'm finding it mildly interesting, whenever they do these flashback stories and aren't dealing with what's current and what's actually affecting the now in the DC universe, then I at least like it to really lean into something that's unique about the characters and their status quo in the time period that the story's taking place in. And so far, I don't see them kind of like leaning into character and who these people were and what their relationships were with each other, you know, the Justice League members at this time. So far, it just feels like removed from what's going on in the DC universe and like it kind of doesn't matter. We'll see if my feelings about that change with the next issue. But that's the World's Finest Batman Superman World's Finest number 31. Then Wonder Woman 13, another Absolute Power tie-in, and as a result, I don't feel like it's moving much forward with what's been going on with Wonder Woman. In fact, I'm trying to remember did we ever resolve the story with the villain, the Sovereign, or are we just picking that up later? Anyway, she and Steve Trevor and Damian Wayne are kind of on a mission to free some heroes or something like that. I can't even remember the details. It was kind of a forgettable issue. The one thing that I guess stands out is that they're really leaning into the romance between Diana and Steve Trevor again, which I feel like is kind of a reestablished relationship. They were kind of off for a while, and there was some ambiguity about whether or not are these like a couple in the same sense that like Superman, like Lois and Clark are a couple. And it seems like they're kind of moving them back in that direction, really playing up the romance, which Damian finds distasteful to put up with throughout this issue. But other than that, it's mostly just, I think, facilitating forward motion for the Absolute Power storyline. But it was still nice to see them lean into that. I hope they do something interesting with their relationship going forward. But that's Wonder Woman number 13. Then we've got Absolute Power Super Son number 1 about Jon Kent, and specifically his sadly all too fast recovery from being overtaken by Brainiac Queen technology, which replaced a large percentage of his body with like robotic Brainiac parts, including like his left eye seemed to have been completely replaced. And he was also taken over mentally by the Brainiac Queen to be a main opponent of the heroes of the DC Universe for a little while there. And I was really hoping, given how much his body had been devastated by this, given how much his mind was overtaken by this, that the aftermath of this would involve a more long-term recovery or have more long-term ramifications for him as a character that would actually give some new storytelling opportunities for Jon Kent instead of just kind of like what they've been doing up to this point. Sadly, it doesn't seem like they're going to take advantage of that. There's still a possibility, but let me show you or get to the panel that I'm thinking of here. As the story opens, he's on Themyscira and being treated by, I don't know if it's the purple ray that they're kind of known for, that can kind of heal anybody of anything, or if it's a little bit more complicated than that. Anyway, there's some Amazon lady saying, hey, we need to do one final examination, John. He's like, Batman, and this was like my least favorite panel in the whole comic. Batman blasted all the evil Brainiac Queen tech out of me. A little sunshine, some rest, and I'm getting back out there to stop Waller once and for all. And there he is, seemingly completely whole. He's got some bandages, but his face looks just fine. His eyeball's back. And I'm just like, oh, crap, you know. So his physical healing, all too easy. But understandable given that he's Kryptonian and Purple Ray and Sunshine and whatever. I get that. But I still want some more long-term ramifications. And maybe there's room for that still, because as the comic progresses, it's clear that the Brainiac Queen had set up some stuff in his brain that complicates his recovery on a mental level more than John initially thinks at this time in the story. And he goes into a subconscious world. It's all part of the treatment and stuff, and seems to be addressing some of these things. And at the end of it all, it's not quite clear to me if this comic is telling us, okay, so he did all the psychological repairs that he needed to do, and he's fine. So there's room for them to still do more, and for us to get some stories with John where he goes back and says, you know what, I'm still not fine. There's still some stuff going on. There's hints of that, but most of the complexity that's left at the end is in a conversation between John and his boyfriend, in which his boyfriend is still very angry at the character that was responsible for helping to free John from his imprisonment with Brainiac, but that character also is responsible for killing his boyfriend's mother. So there's that kind of like complexity between them where John's like, I recognize, they saved my life, but they did some bad stuff too, but they also saved my life, and so it's not as black and white for me. And his boyfriend is like, no, it's pretty clear for me. This person killed my mother, So I think maybe there's some new stuff that might come, but it's in the context of that relationship. And I really want to know more about who John is as a person, independent of his relationship and of his romantic relationship. I think that there's way too much focus. I mean, I like a good romance story. I like the stuff that might be going on with Diana and Steve Trevor, but Diana is a pretty clearly formed character in terms of like what she cares about, what drives her, what she values. John is not there yet, and so to have stories lean so much on a romantic relationship to define who he is and what he's about, I'm not a fan of. I like all the times where they kind of point out that he is the son of both Lois and Clark, and so he's got this reporter side of him and this desire to seek out and to have truth be told, for justice to be done, and a lot of that is like Lois's side of things. And so anytime they play into that, I'm like, okay, so we're doing something original here. We're getting some more sense of his personality. But anyway, right now, it just seems like it's going to be all too easy for them to take him back to the status quo and not do much of interest. That's a big we'll see. I'm thinking this is probably a one-shot, the Super Son, Absolute Power Super Son #1. So I can't remember where normal stories about Jon Kent are being told, but I mean, I guess we'll see what lays ahead for Jon, and if it's anything more interesting to me than it's been up to this point. Finally, we've got Superman #18, in which Superman, the depowered Superman, is traveling with Zatanna, talking to the demon Neron, to try and get access to this map of these shadow dimensions that will allow them to travel around without Amanda Waller knowing, and just kind of leverage that as a weapon against her. Well, they get the map from Neron in a way that seems a little bit too easy to me. Neron is not really interested in getting their souls in exchange for his help, but he's all about deals. He wants to make a deal, and so he tells Superman that the price is, I want you to lie. And he basically makes a big deal out of this, saying, you're Superman, you're the living embodiment of all that's good in the world, you're a man of truth, and this is a really interesting thing I'd like to see play out, is for you to lie for me. And Superman says, you've got a deal, I'll lie for you. There's a little bit of resistance from Zatanna, like, hey, don't do this, you don't know what this could lead to, but he seems pretty quick to do it. He's like, it's okay, Zatanna, let's go. He's got the map, they're ready to go. Neron says, you think you're clever, Superman. And therein might be some hope that they'll do something interesting with this, because as they're leaving and talking, and Zatanna's like, what did you do? It's a little disappointing. He says, Neron asked me to lie, so I did. Now show me how we can use this map. So in his mind, he fulfilled this promise by lying to Neron, saying, I will lie for you, when in fact in that moment he was lying to Neron, and so in Clark's mind that fulfills his end of the bargain. I really hope this isn't the last we've seen of this, and that Neron's comment about, you think you're being clever, was a recognition of what Clark was trying to pull off here. I really don't like it when demonic characters are treated as kind of silly and not clever. Now, I have done that myself. I need to be clear about that in my own writing in the Spirit Blade audio drama trilogy. I've done some of that myself. But when it came to representing Satan in that story, I really tried to allow him to be a lot more clever and devious and aware of the way that we tend to think than demons are typically portrayed. And so, because, Neron is not some, henchman demon like the demons in the Spirit Blade trilogy that were kind of easy to fool and stuff like that, and just kind of like stupid thugs, as it were. Since he's got in this universe like a real place of prominence, my hope is that we're going to find that Neron is actually very smart here, and he knows what he's doing, and he's getting one up on Clark without Clark realizing it. But we'll see if they ever come back to this idea. There was something else, though, that interested me even more. When Superman and Zatanna are traveling, he notices that Zatanna is beginning to waste away. And he says, if I would have known the map was going to do this to you, I wouldn't have let you. And she's like, let me what? I need my magic back, Clark. No matter the sacrifice, I need it. And he's like, we'll get our powers back. We will. You need to know, this is the key thing he says here. We'll get our powers back, but you need to know you're so much more than magic, Zatanna. And I think that what Superman is potentially saying here, I can't know the worldview of the writer. I'm trying to figure out, okay, which perspective on our own identity would the writer be leaning toward in the presentation of this conversation? Because this is actually a really good perspective to affirm to each other that we are far more than what we are good at. We are far more than our careers. We are far more than our aptitudes. We are far more than what we excel at in life. There's plenty of talk in Christian circles about the problems with finding our identity in our gender and sexuality. But I think we need to also address at the same time that we should not be finding our identity in other places that are just empty to find identity in, such as our skills, our talents, our accomplishments. And Christians fall into this way of thinking very, very often without realizing it. Sometimes even kind of spiritualizing it in our minds, that like our role, the way we serve in church, the role that we have, that kind of creeps into our sense of self and our sense of identity and our value. And so we need to be on guard against finding identity in the wrong places as well. And so I think this kind of touches on that in a small way. I'm not saying intentionally, of course, but I think it's worth reflecting on, because he's getting at this broader idea of you are more than what you are good at. You are more than your abilities and skills. And she really pushes back against Clark here and says, Zatanna isn't a code name. It's my name. Like, I'm not in some kind of a superhero mode here. This is like I'm operating as myself in terms of who I'm identifying myself to be. I'm not taking on another persona. And she says, this thing that you hate is my everything. So he was talking about, like, I hate magic because it's just a major weakness of his. But she says, this thing you hate is my everything. Now, what does she mean by that? That's kind of loose metaphorical language. At the very least, she's saying it's extremely valuable to her. She follows up saying, you might have a life outside of your costume, Superman, but Waller didn't just take my powers, she took my life. And I'm really interested what she means by that. Does she mean the way I live my life? I mean, her magic is, I guess, in some ways part of her livelihood. I'm trying to remember if she uses real magic every now and then as part of her magic act, or even if at this point she's doing that as a career. But I want to understand more of what she means by she took my life. It's a very sad thing if she's in the place that so many of us can fall into, where we see our careers, what we're good at, what people affirm and validate us for as like what gives our life value, significance, meaning. As believers, we ought to be going back to Scripture and the fact that our our value and our worth is in being made in the image of God. Even though there's things about that we don't understand exactly what that means, to be made in God's image, to reflect who God is in some way, in a way that's unique from the rest of all creatures. That's really stunning. And then far, I think, even above and beyond that, the fact that God loves us enough that he would live as one of us and die a horrible death because he wants us to be able to live with him forever. That, I can't even calculate the worth of that God ascribes to us by doing that because of his love for us. And that's not something that has anything to do with what we're good at, what we accomplish in life. It doesn't have anything to do with how effectively we serve in the church, how good we are at obeying and submitting to the Lord and what he wants us to be about in life. None of that stuff has any bearing on our value. It's intrinsic to who we are and the fact that God loves us. And so, this is just kind of highlighting something here that it makes me sad for a character like, or a person that is like the character of Zatanna. And so I am wondering still, okay, what exactly does she mean by that? And we don't really get clarity. Anyway, I guess that's pretty much my thoughts for this week. I'm wearing for my ring this week the green ring representing Will. I think I've picked that ring for Essential Issues when I'm trying to discern my way through what's going on in a comic, because sometimes there's things that we have to kind of try and sort through, and that takes an act of the will instead of just like taking it in and just letting it hit us. However, we got to like activate our will. We've got to choose to really try and sort through some things, and so that's what I was trying to do this week with this exchange between Zatanna and Superman. But anyway, not a bad experience reading comics this week. I would love to get your thoughts on these issues. Anything else that came out from the Ultra Tier of DC last week? Anyway, blah blah. Oh man, I was gonna say blah blah blah. I'm talking too much. Now I got a timer for laundry going off. I gotta get out of here. I hope you check out our podcast, bunch of other content at christiangeekcentral.com, all for you as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. It is time again for Christian Geek Central's annual Game Save event, fundraising for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which provides free treatment for children facing life or death circumstances and shares its cutting-edge, life-saving research with hospitals all over the world. You're still welcome to join the Game Save team by following the link in the description below. Once again this year, I'm drawing attention to our team's fundraising by performing a 24-hour marathon of video gaming that I will stream live on youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral beginning 6 a.m. Arizona time on Saturday, November 9th. You can donate or get more info by clicking on my fundraising page in the links below, where you will also find incentives and rewards for doing so. For $5, you can choose a topic for me to share my sometimes overly strong opinions on during my live stream. For $10, you get the previous reward and a download code for a free copy of the Spirit Blade Special Edition audio drama. For $20, you get the previous rewards and you can choose a game for me to play during my November 9th live stream. Pick a favorite or torture me with something terrible or rage-inducingly difficult. For $30, you get the previous rewards and can choose a song for me to sing during my live stream. Pick an old favorite of yours or just make me humiliate and torture myself with something no one wants to hear. And for $50, you get all the previous rewards and a download code for every MP3 product at spiritblade.com. That's a $90 value. On top of that, I have set fundraising milestones that will unlock fun or weird happenings as I reach them. At $200, I'll have a free download day for everyone who visits spiritblade.com on November 16th. And as my total goes beyond $200, I'll unlock increasingly more content for that free download day. And depending on how far beyond $200 my fundraising goes, during my November 9th live stream, I will cover my face in peanut butter and jelly while talking about horror movies, put on a pair of Frozen socks and a Frozen t-shirt at the same time, shoot water up my nose with a turkey baster, and have my wife Holly play a video game with me for 30 minutes. And if I reach a personal fundraising total of $500 or more, I will schedule a 6-hour bonus live stream before the end of the year to either try and finish Dragon Age Inquisition as my bitter old wizard Eldarest, or start a new roleplay focused playthrough as, Well, that's a secret for now. Finally, if I reach my $500 goal by the end of Thursday, October 24th, I will do a 4-hour Get Good live stream before the end of the year, playing a frustratingly difficult game in my collection. Probably another NES Castlevania title. Now, there are some stipulations and time limits on those rewards and milestones, so quickly follow the link below to my fundraising page for all the details. This year will mark 10 years since our first gaming-themed charity fundraiser for kids in great need of medical care. I hope you'll be a part of celebrating that and helping me and the Christian Geek Central Game Save team do some good for some kids who really need it. Then please join me at youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral for my 24-hour marathon starting at 6 a.m. Arizona time on Saturday, November 9th. Hope to see you then.
Oh my gosh. This is all kinds of wrong.